It's the bet that rocked Britain. Two guys making a wager doesn't often become a global news event. But my challenge to the Prime Minister on his plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda triggered an enormous reaction and appears to have triggered an enormous number of people. Here's a reminder of what actually happened. I'll bet you £1,000 to a refugee charity you don't get anybody on those planes before the election. Will you take that bet?
Well, I want to get the people on the planes, right? Of course I want to get the people on the planes.
£1,000.
Right, I want to get the people on the plane. And you say you're scratching your head. Albania is an example of why it's working. We created a new returns agreement with Albania. Yeah. It meant that if people came here illegally, we could send them back, and you know what? They stopped coming. Rwanda will do the same thing for us.
I do not think it's going to work for you.
OK, well, we'll have to agree to disagree.
That's my grim prediction.
But you don't have an alternative way to solve that problem, then?
No, I'm not Prime Minister. Yet. And here's just a small sample of the fallout, which has vied with news of the King's health for headline coverage and even made it to the Houses of Parliament.
How frustrating for you that yesterday our Prime Minister said that he was willing to risk £1,000 on the basis of a bet.
And it was a charity bet, wasn't it?
I don't have a problem with it at all, to be honest with you. I think two multi-millionaires having a bet amongst themselves.
It was absolutely appalling. I've never heard such garbage come out from a politician in my life.
Was it deeply distasteful, as Labour have called it, or would he have been criticised for not backing the bet, as one Conservative commentator has argued?
Can you confirm for the House, Mr Deputy Speaker, that a £1,000 direct pecuniary personal interest is one which should be registered and declared by the House authorities?
Well, Rishi Sunak's political rivals are feasting on the moment, as you'd expect. The Lib Dems called it shameful. The SNP said it's grotesque. And rather hysterically, I thought, reported the Prime Minister for breaching the ministerial code, as they put it. Labour says it proves he's out of touch. They also posted this ad saying, while your pockets are bare, Rishi's betting with £1,000 he has to spare. Not the greatest poetry I think I've read in a while. But first things first, they didn't actually use the right handshake there, Labour Party. They want to think about that. That's him thanking me at the end of the interview, not accepting the bet. And where I come from, Mr Prime Minister, you might try and wriggle off the hook, but a handshake's a sealed bet. Secondly, it's worth noting that Rishi Sunak has now braved 2 extended, uncensored interviews with me while he's been Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer, who wants to be Prime Minister, has repeatedly told me to my face he'll come on the show and has appeared precisely 0 times. So when a lot of the Labour MPs hit social media today, led by Jess Phillips, saying, my God, if he can't even cope with Piers Morgan, what a hope has he got with Vladimir Putin? Well, your leader doesn't appear to be able to cope with me at all. Former Labour spin doctor Alistair Campbell, you may remember him, he spun us into an illegal war that cost the deaths of over 1 million people, posted most of the audience at my book event tonight were unaware of the Sunak-Rwanda bet. When I described the exchange, there were literally sharp intakes of breath and reactions of disgust in the audience. What if it crossed Alistair's mind that might have been the moment they remembered what he did when he was in Downing Street with Tony Blair? So, a lot of reaction. And I don't know how I feel about this, other than to say that when I see Carol Vorderman, an old friend of mine, used to work with me at the Daily Mirror, tweeting hysterically, resign Rishi Sunak about the bet. You're an utter disgrace to this country. And forgotten sitcom actor Robert Lindsay, he was good, don't get me wrong, loved him as Wolfie Smith, lamented, dear anyone with an ounce of humanity. A PM and a TV presenter having a bet on desperate people's lives, and so on and so on and so on. I do think a lot of people may have lost the plot in the maelstrom of pearl clutching in the last 24 hours, and forgotten, actually, that I did start the process of this wager by saying the bet proceeds would go to a refugee charity. I was actually trying to flush out the Prime Minister's conviction and a policy that I believe has always been doomed to failure and is bad for this country. He was trying to underscore his genuine belief that it could work, and I guess you could say he was putting his money where his mouth is, and we all know he has plenty of money to do that with. But like I say, no one ends up with any money here other than a refugee charity. And what is almost certainly going to happen, I suspect, is that I will win this bet. Nobody will end up being sent to Rwanda on a plane, and a refugee charity will be £1,000 better off. could argue that's quite a good win-win all round. Well, the Prime Minister himself was asked to clarify the wager this morning.
I'm being totally honest, I'm not a betting person, and I was taken totally by surprise in the middle of that interview. And the point I was trying to get across...
Was it a mistake to shake his hand?
No, well, the point I was trying to get across, I said I was taken totally by surprise.
Was it a mistake to take my hand? Well, I'm not Hannibal Lecter. The best questions are always a surprise, even for Prime Ministers. It should be noted he has not officially withdrawn the bet, and I wouldn't let him. A handshake's a handshake. Former Tory leader William Hague, though, had some interesting tips on how he would have handled this. He said he'd have attacked me with his martial arts.
What do you do there, William Hague? How do you shake his hand? Do you make the bet? Do you think that's all right, or do you avoid that landmine?
It'd be really nice to do a judo move on it, wouldn't it? Holding out his hand. But however, that's the sort of thing I can fantasize about today and couldn't have done when I was a party leader. No, to bat the hand away.
Fantasizing about grappling me in a judo hold. This is the man who wanted to be Prime Minister. Should be known as the same William Hague who once boasted of drinking 14 pints a day. Obviously a tough cookie. And Sam Coates over at Sky News gave this analysis.
You know, the point about that exchange with Piers Morgan, and actually, you know, listening to Rishi Sunak try not very well to defend it this morning, he's like, he just gets dragged into stuff, you know. But you've got to deal with more difficult people than Piers Morgan. You've got to deal with Vladimir Putin.
Hey, who says that Putin's more difficult than me? What do you base that on? Shame on you, Sam Coates. I was going to mention James O'Brien over at LBC who was ranting away about me, but he does it so often, and he's so insufferably irritating, I'm going to spare you, my own viewers, from having to even see his face. Now, at the heart of all this is a serious issue. I've said repeatedly I don't believe the Rwanda plan is either practical or affordable or indeed humane. I think the PM is finally making some progress on illegal immigration with the boats. He's got them down substantially thanks to a deal with Albania. But this Rwanda plan, as I said to him to his face, is a cack-handed plan that is just never going to work. And the bet, Prime Minister, most definitely stands.